On a sunny and ordinary morning, Sarah's life changed forever. A terrible accident left her trapped and hopeless, but what happened next was totally unexpected. A stray dog, neglected by his owners, appeared and did something no one could have imagined. This emotional story will show how fate can bring lives together in surprising ways. Prepare for a journey of courage, resilience, and a bond that transcends all expectations. Rex was a dog with sad eyes and matted fur, wandering the streets of a small town. His original owners, a family who initially welcomed him enthusiastically, soon tired of the responsibilities of caring for a pet. Rex went from being the center of attention to a neglected nuisance, receiving only the bare minimum to survive. His days were a monotonous repetition of hunger, thirst, and loneliness. He often escaped the yard in search of food and some attention but rarely found anything beyond disdainful looks and closed doors. Sarah, on the other hand, was a woman constantly on the move. An executive at a large company, her life revolved around deadlines and meetings, leaving little room for anything else. She grew up in an environment where animals were seen as dirty and inconvenient, a view she carried into adulthood. Sarah had little time for friends and even less for hobbies or pastimes. Her routine was relentless, and to her everything was just fine that way. Pets were never part of her life plan. She considered having a dog an additional task that simply didn't fit into her busy schedule. Rex and Sarah lived in parallel worlds, unaware of each other but united by an invisible thread of loneliness and discontent. Rex dreamed of a different life, where he could run freely and be loved. Sarah, though she wouldn't admit it to herself, felt a growing emptiness that her job and routine couldn't fill. Their paths seemed destined never to cross, but fate had other plans. Both were about to embark on a journey that would change their lives forever. A journey that would begin in an unexpected and dramatic way. The neighborhood where they lived was a web of quiet streets and family homes, but it hid stories of abandonment and neglect. Rex, with his ability to escape home, knew every nook and cranny. He knew where to find scraps of food and which alleys to avoid. Sarah, on the other hand, saw the neighborhood only as a place of transit, a starting point and destination between home and work. She rarely noticed the details around her, absorbed in her thoughts and concerns. However, the routine was about to be disrupted, and Rex and Sarah's paths, so different and distant, were about to intertwine indelibly. It was a rainy and gloomy afternoon when Sarah, driving home after a long day at work, encountered a dangerous curve on a rural road. The torrential rain reduced visibility to almost nothing, and the wet asphalt made every movement of the steering wheel a delicate task. Sarah, exhausted and with her mind still on the day's last discussions, didn't notice the imminent danger until it was too late. Trying to correct the car's trajectory on a tight curve, she lost control of the vehicle. The car skidded violently, spinning down the road before crashing hard into a sturdy tree. The impact was devastating. The metallic sound of the car contorting and the tree cracking echoed through the surrounding forest. Sarah was thrown against the steering wheel, and the airbag inflated, but the force of the impact left her stunned and disoriented. When the dust and shattered glass finally settled, she realized the gravity of the situation. The car was tilted at a dangerous angle, with the front smashed against the tree, and the driver's door so deformed that it seemed impossible to open. Sarah tried to move, but a sharp pain radiated from her leg, indicating she was trapped and possibly severely injured. Inside the wrecked vehicle, the scene was one of absolute chaos. The dashboard was shattered, the windows broken, and the seats twisted. Sarah looked around in despair, trying to find a way out. Her trembling fingers tried to reach her phone, but the device was out of reach, fallen somewhere in the depths of the car. The pain in her leg and the bruises on her arms and face increased the feeling of panic and helplessness. Every attempt to move resulted in more pain, and every passing second felt like an eternity. The sound of the rain hitting the car and the oppressive silence around her only intensified her fear. As the reality of her situation solidified, Sarah began to feel a wave of despair. She was alone, injured, and unable to move. The road was scarcely traveled, especially at that hour and with that weather. The possibility of someone passing by and seeing her seemed increasingly remote. She screamed for help, but the sound was muffled by the rain and the car itself. The feeling of isolation and vulnerability was overwhelming. With tears streaming down her face and her body trembling with pain and cold, Sarah closed her eyes and tried to calm down, knowing she needed to save her energy and keep hope alive, no matter how difficult that seemed at the moment. Rex, the neglected dog, was wandering the streets as he did every day. His owners rarely bothered to keep him at home, and he was used to roaming the neighborhood in search of food and some form of attention. On that rainy day, Rex was sheltering under an old tree trying to stay dry. His keen ears picked up something different in the sound of the rain and thunder. A distant, desperate scream. His instincts sharpened and he lifted his head, trying to identify the source of the sound. The scream came again, weaker this time but unmistakably human. Driven by an impulse he didn't fully understand, Rex began to run in the direction of the screams. The road was dark and slippery, but Rex ran with determination. His senses were on high alert, guiding him through the storm. As he approached, he saw the wrecked car pinned against the tree. The scene was chaotic, with debris scattered and the rain pounding furiously against the twisted metal. Without hesitation, Rex approached the vehicle, sniffing and barking in alarm. He circled the car, trying to find a way to help. Through a broken window, he saw Sarah, injured and conscious but clearly in agony. Their eyes met, and for a moment, a spark of hope shone in hers. Rex began to scratch at the car door, barking loudly to attract the attention of anyone who might help. His barks were strong and relentless, echoing through the forest and blending with the sound of the rain. Sarah, seeing the dog's desperate effort, felt a wave of gratitude and hope. Even without words, there was a clear communication between them. Rex was there to help, and he wouldn't leave until he succeeded. The dog's courage and determination were palpable, and despite her pain, Sarah began to believe there might be a chance of rescue. As time passed and no humans were in sight, Rex decided to act differently. He began running back to the main road, stopping occasionally to bark and try to attract the attention of any passing cars. His persistence finally paid off when a driver saw the wet and insistent dog in the middle of the road. The driver, curious and concerned, stopped the car and followed Rex, who led him directly to the accident site. Seeing the scene, the driver immediately called emergency services. Rex stayed by Sarah's side, licking her injured hand and trying to comfort her until help arrived. He had done his part, proving to be an unexpected hero amid the chaos. The minutes felt like hours as the rain continued to beat furiously on the ground and the car's metal. When the first sounds of emergency sirens approached, Rex ran back to the road, barking with a mix of relief and urgency. The rescuers arrived quickly, bringing equipment and professionals ready to deal with the situation. Seeing Rex, they understood that the dog had led them there, and one of the paramedics knelt down and petted the wet dog's head, acknowledging his heroism. Rex, exhausted but determined, watched every move, ensuring Sarah was safe. The rescuers began working frantically to free Sarah from the wreckage. They used tools to cut the twisted metal and release the seatbelts that trapped her. Rex, sensing the gravity of the situation, stayed close, watching every move and occasionally barking, as if urging the rescuers to hurry. Sarah, seeing the determined faces of the rescuers and feeling the constant presence of Rex, felt a wave of hope and strength. The rescuers finally managed to create enough space to pull Sarah out of the car, carefully placing her on a stretcher and taking her to the ambulance. As the ambulance left, Rex was left behind, watching as the flashing lights disappeared into the distance. The driver who had initially stopped took care of Rex, realizing the importance of ensuring the dog was safe. He put Rex in his car and took him to a temporary shelter, where he could be cared for and fed. At that moment, Rex didn't know what the future held for him, but his heroic instinct had saved a life and touched many others. Sarah's rescue was a testament to the unique bond between humans and animals, and Rex's courage would not soon be forgotten. As Sarah recovered in the hospital, the days seemed to drag on slowly. Her physical wounds were beginning to heal, but the emotional impact of the accident still haunted her. She spent hours staring at the ceiling, recalling the terrifying moments when she was trapped in the car, and the overwhelming sense of despair. However, amidst those dark memories, the heroic figure of a dog who had appeared out of nowhere and saved her kept surfacing. Sarah began to feel a deep gratitude for that unknown animal, and found herself thinking about him constantly. Curious about the dog that had saved her life, Sarah asked the hospital staff to help her find out more about him. She talked to the rescuers and the driver who had stopped to help, trying to piece together the events of that fateful night. Each person had a slightly different story, but they all agreed on one thing. The dog had been crucial to her rescue. Sarah, who had never cared much about animals, started to develop a new appreciation for the role they could play in people's lives. She wanted to personally thank that hero. During her physical therapy sessions, Sarah couldn't help but talk about the dog that saved her. The therapists and other patients listened to her stories with admiration, and many shared their own experiences with animals. These conversations began to change Sarah's perception of animals. She realized she had never given animals the attention and respect they deserved. This newfound understanding led her to research shelters and animal rescue organizations, wanting to get involved and perhaps help other animals like the one that had saved her. As Sarah's recovery progressed, she felt stronger and more determined each day. She began writing in a journal, documenting her feelings and the transformation she was experiencing. In the journal, she recorded her gratitude for the dog and her plans to find him. Sarah also started to take an interest in animal rescue stories, watching documentaries and reading books on the subject. This quest for knowledge brought her closer to the world of animals, and she knew that once she was fully recovered, she would do everything in her power to find the dog that saved her and thank him personally. After weeks of recovery and investigation, Sarah finally received a lead on the whereabouts of the dog that saved her. A nurse at the hospital mentioned seeing a dog matching Rex's description wandering in a nearby neighborhood. Sarah felt a mix of anxiety and hope as she decided to follow this lead. With the help of a friend, she went to the area mentioned and started asking residents about the dog. Some people recognized him and said he often appeared at an old, poorly maintained house at the end of the street. When she arrived at the location, Sarah was shocked by the state of the house. It looked abandoned and neglected, much like the dog that lived there. Suddenly, she saw Rex, dirty and thin, coming out of a corner of the yard. When their eyes met, Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. Rex, though in poor condition, recognized her immediately. His eyes sparkled with a mix of surprise and recognition. He approached slowly, wagging his tail hesitantly, as if he couldn't believe that the woman he had helped was now standing before him. Sarah knelt and extended her hand to Rex, who responded with a gentle, almost timid lick on her fingers. She could see the scars from the hard life he had been living. The moment was emotional and silent, a deep connection forming between them. Sarah whispered words of gratitude and affection, feeling tears stream down her face. She knew she couldn't leave him there. Rex had saved her life, and now it was her turn to repay the favor. Determined to change the dog's life, Sarah gently petted him and promised him a new life. Sarah contacted Rex's current owners, who didn't seem to have much interest or attachment to the dog. To her surprise, they were willing to give him up without any resistance. Feeling immense relief, Sarah made arrangements to take Rex with her. She first took him to the vet for a complete checkup. Rex was visibly malnourished and needed medical care. Sarah was determined to give him everything he needed to recover. As Rex received treatment, she began planning how to integrate this new member into her life. The transformation in Rex's life began immediately. He went from being a neglected dog to a beloved member of Sarah's family. Over time, Rex began to gain weight, his coat became shinier, and his personality grew more confident and joyful. Sarah in turn found a new mission in life. Inspired by Rex's heroism and loyalty, she began to get involved with animal shelters and adoption campaigns, sharing her story to inspire others to see the value and beauty in stray animals. The connection between Sarah and Rex grew stronger every day, cemented by the deep bond created on the day of the accident. With Rex fully recovered and integrated into her life, Sarah felt her heart fuller than ever. The gratitude she felt for the dog who had saved her was immense, and this experience profoundly changed her perception of animals and their needs. Determined to make a difference, Sarah started visiting animal shelters and volunteering in adoption campaigns. Each story she heard about abandoned dogs touched her deeply, and she saw a bit of Rex in each of those animals. The transformation in Sarah was evident to everyone around her. Friends and family who had once seen her as a skeptical and distant person regarding animals now witnessed her passion and dedication. Sarah began using her communication skills and natural charisma to organize adoption events and awareness campaigns. She told her story with Rex to inspire others to see the value and potential in stray animals. Her home became a meeting place for discussions on how to improve the conditions of abandoned animals in the city. In one of these campaigns, Sarah decided to create a foundation in Rex's name. The Rex Animal Rescue Foundation aimed to provide medical care, food, and temporary shelters for abandoned dogs. Through donations and charity events, the foundation quickly began to grow. Sarah worked tirelessly, finding partners, establishing volunteer programs, and mobilizing the community for the cause. Rex, always by her side, became the living symbol of everything she was fighting to achieve. The impact of this new journey in Sarah's life was profound. She found a greater purpose that connected her with people who shared her passion for animals. Together, they managed to rescue and rehabilitate dozens of dogs, offering them a second chance to find loving homes. Sarah realized her life had changed completely, not just because of Rex's rescue, but because of the path of compassion and service he inspired. Rex's story was not just about a miraculous rescue but about transformation and the power of unconditional love an animal can bring to a person's life.